I never thought a prenup my father insisted on would be the thing that ruined my life. 6 months ago, my husband Jake served me divorce papers at my office, in front of all my coworkers, and my world hasn't been the same since. I'm Cindy, 32, and I need to tell my side of this story because Jake has been spreading lies about me to anyone who will listen. Yes, I made mistakes. Yes, I hurt him, but nobody understands what led me there or how trapped I felt in that marriage. Jake and I met when we were both in our early 20s. He was fresh out of the Navy, working at a defense contractor, and I was just starting my marketing career. He was different from the guys I usually dated. Rough around the edges, blue-collar background, but there was something real about him. My previous boyfriends had all been from families like mine, and they were exhausting with their pretentious conversations and country club memberships. I remember our first date at this little Italian place near the base. Jake showed up in jeans and a polo shirt, and I could tell he was nervous. He kept apologizing for not knowing which fork to use, and it was endearing. Here was this guy who worked on fighter jets, who'd served his country, worried about impressing me with table manners. My father hated Jake from day one, not because Jake did anything wrong, but because he didn't have a college degree and came from what my dad called those people. The first time I brought Jake to a family dinner, my father spent the entire meal grilling him about his career prospects and making snide comments about enlisted military. "So, Jake," my father said, cutting his steak with surgical precision, "what exactly does an aircraft electrician do? Is that like being an electrician, but simpler?" Jake handled it with more grace than my father deserved, explaining the complexity of military aviation systems. But I could see the judgment in my father's eyes. To him, Jake would always be beneath us. "He's using you," my father would say every chance he got. "These types always go after girls like you. He sees dollar signs, Cindy. Open your eyes." I defended Jake every time. I told my father he was wrong, that Jake made good money, that he wasn't after our family's wealth. But my father wouldn't listen. He'd grown up poor himself, built his wealth management firm from nothing, and now he saw gold diggers everywhere. When Jake asked for his blessing to marry me, my father laughed in his face. Actually laughed. Jake never told me that part, but my father bragged about it later at the country club. My mother overheard him telling his golf buddies how this grease monkey thought he was good enough for his daughter. The prenup was my father's idea, of course. He called Jake to his office. His corner office with the view of the city, designed to intimidate, and basically told him, sign it or no wedding. "I've seen too many young men like you," my father told him, or so he recounted to me later. "Coming after successful families thinking you've hit the lottery. This prenup will protect my daughter when you show your true colors." Jake agreed immediately, which surprised my father. What he didn't know was that Jake took it to his own lawyer and added an infidelity clause. At the time, I thought it was insulting. Why would either of us need that? We were in love. I was actually hurt that Jake thought we needed protection from each other. "It's just fair," Jake said when I questioned it. "Same rules for both of us." Our wedding should have been perfect, but my family made it miserable. The rehearsal dinner was a disaster. My father gave a toast that was more like a roast, making jokes about Jake's background, his family's simple tastes, and how Cindy always liked projects. Jake's family sat there stone-faced while mine laughed at jokes that weren't funny. The wedding day itself was worse. My family took over one side of the reception hall like they were holding court. They spent the entire reception making snide comments about Jake's family. My Aunt Margaret actually asked Jake's sister where she got her shoes, then stage whispered to my mother that Payless still exists, apparently. My mother cornered Jake's mom by the dessert table. "So brave of you to wear white to your son's wedding," she said with her fake smile. "Though I suppose fashion rules are more flexible in your circles." Jake's mom was wearing a cream-colored dress that was perfectly appropriate, but my mother had already decided these people were beneath us. The confrontation between our fathers happened during the father-daughter dance. My father had been drinking his expensive scotch all night, getting bolder with each glass. He approached Jake's father by the bar. "You must be so proud," my father said, his voice dripping condescension. "Your son really hit the jackpot with my daughter." "My son doesn't need your money," Jake's father replied. "He makes his own way." "Sure he does," my father laughed. "That's why he's marrying up, right?" That's when Jake's father asked if he'd ever had his ass kicked. My father went pale and scurried away, but the damage was done. The two families would never speak again after that night. But we survived it. Jake and I built our life together despite the rocky start. The first 4 years were good. At least I thought they were. Jake was attentive, generous, always wanting to take care of me. He insisted I quit my first marketing job because the hours were too long, and he wanted to provide for me. "You don't need to work those crazy hours," he said. "I make more than enough. Let me take care of you." I was touched at the time. My ex-boyfriends had all expected me to use my family connections to boost their careers. Jake wanted nothing from my family. In fact, he seemed to prefer when we didn't see them. Looking back, I think he just wanted me dependent on him. That's the thing about Jake. Everything had to be his way. He picked our apartment, a modern place close to his work but far from mine. He chose all our furniture, always practical stuff, nothing like the beautiful pieces I'd grown up with. He even had opinions about my clothes. "Why do you need another dress?" he'd ask whenever I went shopping. "Don't you have enough?" "It's for the Henderson wedding," I'd explain. "Wear the blue one from last year. Nobody will remember." Meanwhile, he'd spend thousands on tools and electronics without blinking. His home office looked like a Best Buy, but God forbid I wanted a new pair of shoes. About 2 years ago, things started changing. Jake became distant, always locked away in his office working on his computer. He'd spend entire weekends in there, only coming out for meals. When I asked what he was working on, he'd mutter something about projects and change the subject. Our intimate life, which had been very active, started declining rapidly. We went from nearly every day to maybe once a month, and only when I practically begged. I'd try to initiate, wearing lingerie he used to love, suggesting date nights, even trying to join him in the shower like we used to, and he'd brush me off. "I'm tired, Cindy. Not tonight, I have an early meeting. Can you just give me some space?" Do you know what that does to a woman's self-esteem? To be constantly rejected by your own husband? I started wondering if he was having an affair, if he'd found someone else. I even checked his phone once while he slept, but found nothing. I started going out with my coworkers more just to feel human again. Just drinks after work, nothing inappropriate. We'd go to happy hour at the trendy spots downtown, and for a few hours, I'd feel like myself again. Like the young professional I used to be, not just Jake's housewife. But Jake acted like I was committing a crime. He'd text constantly when I was out. "When are you coming home?" "Who's there?" "Are there guys there?" "Why aren't you home with your family?" he'd demand when I got back. "We don't have kids, Jake. You're my only family and you barely talk to me anymore." That's dramatic, Cindy. I talk to you. About what? The weather? What's for dinner? When was the last time we had a real conversation? He'd just roll his eyes and go back to his office. Then I met Daniel. He worked in our IT department, helped me when my computer crashed one afternoon. He was everything Jake wasn't. Attentive, interested in my thoughts, actually looked at me when I spoke. He had this way of making me laugh, real laughter, not the polite chuckles I'd gotten used to at home. It started innocently. Coffee breaks where we'd talk about books, lunch conversations about our favorite movies, work happy hours where we'd end up talking in the corner while everyone else got drunk. He listened to my ideas about marketing campaigns, asked follow-up questions, remembered details from previous conversations. "You're brilliant," he told me one day after I pitched an idea. "Why aren't you running the department?" I used to be more ambitious, I admitted, but my husband thinks the long hours would be too much. "Your husband sounds like he doesn't appreciate what he has," Daniel said, and something in his eyes made my heart race. I knew it was wrong when the texting started. Little messages throughout the day. "Hope your presentation went well," or "saw this article and thought of you." But after months of being ignored by my husband, having someone actually want to talk to me was intoxicating. The first time we kissed was in his car after a particularly bad day. I'd tried to talk to Jake the night before about our marriage, about how unhappy I was, and he'd actually laughed. "Unhappy? You don't work, I pay for everything, what could you possibly be unhappy about?" When I started crying, he said I was being manipulative. So when Daniel offered to drive me home after work and pulled over to ask if I was okay, when he wiped my tears and told me I deserved better, I kissed him. And for the first time in months, I felt wanted. The guilt hit immediately. I went home that night determined to fix my marriage. I cooked Jake's favorite meal, wore the red dress he bought me for our anniversary, tried to create a romantic evening. "What's all this?" he asked, suspicious. "I thought we could have a nice dinner together, talk like we used to." "I already ate at work. I have code to review tonight." And he went to his office, leaving me sitting alone at our dining table with candles and his favorite meal getting cold. The affair continued for 3 months. Yes, I had a second phone, a cheap Android I bought with cash and hid in my purse. I'm not an idiot. I knew it was wrong, but I was so starved for affection, for someone to actually want me, that I couldn't stop. Daniel made me feel like the woman I used to be before Jake turned me into his kept housewife. He'd send me poems during the day, tell me I was beautiful, plan actual dates even though we had to be careful. We'd meet at hotels during lunch, or I'd say I was at happy hour with the girls and spend the evening with him. The lies came so easily after a while. Jake never questioned them. He was too busy with whatever he was doing in that office. Sometimes I wondered if he'd even notice if I didn't come home at all. When Jake confronted me about being distant, I panicked. I thought he knew. My heart was pounding as he talked about my phone habits and going out with coworkers. I deleted everything from my regular phone, messages, photos, call logs, and even showed it to him to prove nothing was wrong. "See?" I said, handing him my iPhone. "Nothing to hide." He seemed satisfied, and I thought maybe this was my wake-up call. Maybe I could end things with Daniel and recommit to my marriage. I even tried for a few days, staying home in the evenings, attempting conversation with Jake. But Jake had already made up his mind. He'd been playing detective, going through my things while I slept. He found my other phone. I still don't know how. Maybe I got careless. Maybe he saw me use it. Maybe he was more observant than I gave him credit for. Instead of confronting me like an adult, he disappeared. Just vanished one morning while I was at work, taking everything that mattered to him and leaving me behind like trash. I came home to an empty office. His computer's gone, his clothes missing from the closet, even his gaming consoles vanished. At first, I thought we'd been robbed. Then I saw what he'd left, our wedding photo, face down on his empty desk. The texts I sent him that day weren't frantic, like he probably told everyone. I was terrified. My husband had vanished without a word. I didn't know if he was hurt, if something had happened, if he was having some kind of breakdown. "Jake, where are you?" "Please just let me know you're okay." "Whatever's wrong, we can talk about it." "I love you, please come home." No response, nothing. I called his mother, and she called me names I won't repeat before hanging up on me. His father answered once, just to tell me to stop calling, "you cheating witch." Except he didn't say witch. My own friends were divided. Some had suspected about Daniel and kept quiet. Others were shocked, but immediately took Jake's side. "How could you?" my friend Melissa asked. "He gave you everything. Everything but attention, affection, love." But nobody wanted to hear that. When I was served at work, in front of everyone, I knew it was intentional. Jake wanted to humiliate me. The process server asked for me by name at reception, made sure to say divorce papers loud enough for everyone to hear. My coworkers all stared as I read the papers, some of them smirking because they knew about Daniel. The whispers started immediately. By lunch, everyone knew. By the end of the day, HR called me in. They'd received an anonymous tip about my inappropriate relationship with Daniel, complete with evidence. The mediation was torture. Jake wouldn't even look at me. I wore his favorite dress, the blue one he always said made my eyes pop, and he stared at the wall like I wasn't there. I tried to explain, to tell him how lonely I'd been, how rejected I'd felt, but he wouldn't listen. "Jake, please, just hear me out. It didn't mean anything. I was just so alone." His lawyer cut me off. "Mr. Thompson, please remind your client that all communication should go through counsel." "Control your client," Jake's lawyer kept saying whenever I tried to speak to my husband. Control me, like I was some animal. I watched Jake's face for any sign of emotion, any crack in his cold facade. Nothing. He signed papers, discussed asset division, all without acknowledging I was in the room. The man who once cried at our wedding now treated me like a stranger. You want to know the really sick part? After the divorce was finalized, Jake sent all the evidence to my HR department and to Daniel's wife. Screenshots of texts, photos, even a video I didn't know he had. He wanted to destroy not just my marriage, but my entire life. I lost my job the next day. Violation of company policy regarding workplace relationships, they said. Daniel lost his too. His wife took their kids and left the state. His whole life imploded because Jake needed his revenge. But the cruelest cut came from my father. Jake sent him everything too. The texts where I called him baby, the photos from hotel rooms, every humiliating detail. He even included a note. "Thanks for the prenup suggestion. It saved me a fortune. Enjoy explaining this to your country club friends." My father called me immediately. I'd never heard him so angry. "You stupid, stupid girl," he screamed. "Do you know what you've done? Do you know how this makes me look?" "Dad, I made a mistake." "A mistake? You humiliated our entire family. That blue-collar nobody is laughing at us, at me. He sent this to my office, Cindy. My secretary saw it." My mother was sobbing in the background. "How could you do this to us?" "To you? My marriage just ended." "You ended it," my father spat. "You had one job, don't embarrass the family, and you couldn't even do that. That prenup was supposed to protect you from him, and you handed him the gun to shoot you with." He hasn't spoken to me in 6 months. My mother says he can't even look at pictures of me without getting angry. She calls sometimes when he's at work, crying about how I've ruined family gatherings, how everyone at the club knows, how she can't show her face at charity events. "Mrs. Wellington asked about you at the gala," she told me last week. "I had to pretend you were traveling abroad. Do you know how humiliating it is to lie about your own daughter?" I'm living in a studio apartment now, working retail because no marketing firm will hire me after what happened. My reputation is destroyed. The story spread through our industry like wildfire. The executive who had an affair with IT and got caught. Some versions are even worse than the truth. My family has essentially disowned me. My sister Madison told me I'm not welcome at her wedding next year. "Tom's family is very conservative," she explained. "We can't have any scandals." All because I sought comfort from someone who actually wanted to spend time with me. Jake's playing the victim, telling everyone how I betrayed him. I heard from mutual friends that he's the hero at work now, the guy who survived a cheating wife and came out stronger. But what about his betrayal? What about the months of rejection, the cold shoulders, the way he treated me like a roommate instead of a wife? Nobody talks about that. "You should have just left him," my therapist says. "Had an honest conversation, asked for counseling, gotten a divorce if necessary." Easy to say now. But when you're in it, when you're drowning in loneliness in your own home, when the man who promised to love you treats you like furniture, you make bad choices. The The prenup I signed 6 years ago has a special place in my personal hell. The infidelity clause that Jake added means I get nothing. 6 years of marriage and I walked away with my clothes and nothing else. The car Jake bought me? His name was on the title. He sold it the week after I moved out, probably to prove a point. The apartment? His. The furniture we picked together? All his. Even the jewelry he gave me over the years had to be returned. Marital assets, his lawyer called them. I'm 32 years old, starting over with nothing, while Jake kept everything we built together. My father framed the prenup in his office, my cousin told me. He shows it to young men who come asking to marry into wealthy families. This is what happens when you underestimate the working class, he supposedly says. The irony burns. My father wanted to protect his money from Jake. Instead, that prenup protected Jake from me. The man my father called a gold digger is the one who walked away with everything, while his daughter lost it all. Daniel and I don't speak anymore. His life is ruined too, thanks to Jake's scorched earth approach to revenge. His ex-wife posts on social media about being a survivor and a single warrior mom. Sometimes I wonder if the 3 months of feeling wanted were worth losing everything. In my darkest moments, I think maybe they were. At least for those 3 months, someone saw me as more than just a disappointment or an obligation. I know I'm supposed to take accountability and move on. But when you're 32, divorced, unemployed, and ostracized by everyone you know, moving on feels impossible. All because I wanted someone to want me the way my husband used to. My life is a cautionary tale now. The woman who had everything and threw it away for an office affair. Nobody asks why. Nobody wonders what would drive someone to risk everything. They just judge and move on. Jake gets to be the hero who stood up to his cheating wife while I'm the villain who destroyed a good man. But was he good? A good husband doesn't ignore his wife for months. A good husband doesn't make her beg for affection. A good husband notices when she's drowning and throws her a life preserver, not locks himself in his office with his computers. If I could go back, would I do things differently? Of course. I'd either never marry Jake or I'd leave him properly instead of cheating. But I can't go back. All I can do is live with the consequences of wanting to feel loved and making terrible choices to find it. The prenup is framed in my father's office now, a monument to his ego and my failure. My failed marriage became his victory lap, proof that he was right about Jake all along. Except he wasn't right. Jake wasn't after our money. He was just a man who stopped loving his wife and then destroyed her when she looked for love elsewhere. That's my side of the story. Not as clean as Jake's version where he's the innocent victim, but it's the truth. Take it or leave it.